Hello and welcome to our activity, Quest for Function. Today we'll be learning about how to identify function, strategy, and mechanism as part of a biomimicry practice. As we practice biomimicry, we observe and identify functions that organisms and systems are doing in order to survive and thrive in their environment. Diving deeper, we discover how organisms have adapted to carry out those functions so that we can apply those lessons to human challenges. The process for doing this is to go out into nature, seek out organisms, and observe what they're doing. Specifically, we need to answer the following questions. First, what is the organism doing, or what problem is it solving? This is what we call the function. For example, has it found a unique way to deal with the climate it lives in or predators that are in its environment? Or maybe it's especially adept at foraging for food or gathering water. Next, we need to answer, how is it solving the problem or achieving that function? This is its strategy. Maybe it has developed a specific shape that makes it really excellent at doing that, or a unique process or method. Maybe they have a novel interaction with other species in their environment or with the conditions that they have to live under. Next, we have to look at what conditions does the solution or strategy function under. This is what we call the context. Maybe it's functioning at a specific temperature, or in the presence of certain chemicals or resources, or on a given scale, maybe on a really small scale, or on a really large scale. And finally, we must discover the specifics of how that strategy works under those conditions. And this is what we call the mechanism. This is the nuts and bolts of the design that allows us to apply that strategy to other issues, other human problems or designs. If we look at this example of the leaves on this plant and the way that they are arranged and the way that they are structured and the size of them, would that inform how we design a satellite? Do they have a similar function? And if so, can we use that strategy from the plant on the human design? That's going to depend on understanding the mechanism. Now that we understand what we're looking for, it's time to get ready to go outside. And as we prepare ourselves to do that, we need to round up a few items. First, you'll need several copies of the activity worksheet and a clipboard so that you can take notes out in the field. You're also going to need writing utensils, including something to sketch your organism with while you're outside. Be sure and dress for the conditions, and what that means will vary by the season, what region you're in, and also what your personal preference is. I also like to bring some specialized observation tools like a jeweler's loupe or a magnifying glass, binoculars, and I usually like to bring a camera. Sometimes my phone serves that function. So you're ready to head outside in search of interesting organisms, functions, and strategies. As you do that, you may need to take a wide perspective. Or you may find them by taking a closer look and examining the details. Be curious about what you see, hear, smell, and feel around you. Like if all of these trees are competing for sunlight, which is the same function, why are some growing straight up and others spread themselves out and have crooked trunks and branches? What about this part of the forest? Why is every surface covered in other organisms? If I look closely, there's moss covering every surface. I see lichens and all manner of life. What about this surface? Besides the moss and lichens, we also have several different types of fungus growing here. But why is there nothing growing on the surface of this fern? It lives in the same place and under the same conditions. How does it stay clean? So this brings us to a function. Maintaining a clean surface is what the fern is doing. We could ask the question, how does nature keep a clean surface? We find another example of a plant with a clean surface. We want to examine the characteristics of this organism if we're going to discover how it's able to do that. What do you notice about the shape of the leaves, or the texture on the surface of each one? Or what about the growth patterns of the leaves relative to the entire plant? As you observe these characteristics, use your worksheet to record what you find. First, you're going to make a sketch of your organism and note any specific characteristics, like the clean surfaces or the dark waxy leaves, maybe the pointed tips and serrated edges on each one. Also, note the function you're investigating or describe what purpose you think those features may serve. The biomimicry taxonomy is a tool you can use to help identify function. You may also use it during field observations or refer to it later as you research your organism. Another critical element to document while you're in the field is context. Make note of the conditions like temperature or exposure to sun or wind, access to essentials like water or sunlight, and any associated organisms, or lack thereof, you might notice. Photos can also help capture context, but are limited to visual information. Use all of your senses and document what you find. So hopefully you've captured some critical details about your organism and the context in which it lives. Now it's time to move on to doing some research. The next task is to identify your organism. You may be able to do this in the field because of prior knowledge or by using a field guide or mobile app on your phone. There are many sources of accurate information for identifying your organism, both in the field and as part of more in-depth research. We begin to understand the strategy by carrying some of the characteristics we observed in our sketch down into the pertinent field of your worksheet. So we noticed that the leaves were waxy on the surface, we noticed that they had serrated edges and tapered to a specific tip on the end of each one. As you learn more about your organism, you should be able to flesh out the strategy by correlating observations you made in the field with research using local and online resources. Recall that the strategy is an adaptation of form, process, or system that allows the organism to succeed at a given function under specific conditions or context. Once you've clearly described this strategy, it's time to translate that strategy into a mechanism. Mechanism describes the specifics of how the strategy works. The language used to describe the mechanism should not have any biological terms and can be applied directly to human design. Using our organism from earlier, the salal, we can apply the mechanism of funneling liquids from a broad surface to a narrow tapering tip to various designs and human challenges. I hope this exercise has helped you develop your skills to learn and emulate natural forms, processes, and ecosystems. Continue practicing. Get out in nature, sketch what you find, and be inquisitive about what you're observing. Pay attention to and make note of the context. You can take those observations further by identifying and familiarizing yourself with the methods employed by your local organisms. Then translate those strategies to mechanisms for application to human design. Thanks for joining us, and keep practicing.